Okay, I just went over how you get these formulas, which I said you didn't need to know. So if you're just starting with this, all you really need to do is write the title and the formulas. Thing you need to know is for the law of cosines, the only time you can use this is when you have side, angle, side, or side, side, side. So you would need to know two sides with the angle in between, side, angle, side, or side, side, side. The rest of them you would use the law of cosines for. So just so you know, on the test, you will be given a triangle and you'll have to know whether you use the law of sines or the law of cosines to solve. So in order to use the law of cosines, it's either side, angle, side, or side, side, side. Everything else will be using the law of sines from yesterday. All right, let's do an example. Okay, so here we have an example. We're going to solve the triangle rounding to the nearest tenth. We have 100 degrees. This side we don't know, which is B. We know this side is 5 and this side is 7. When it says solve the triangle, it means that we're going to solve for all the pieces, all the angles, and all the sides. We actually have to start with solving for a side. I have two sides. I have to find the third. Knowing that I know angle B, I'm going to be using this equation where I have to solve for B squared. So the first step is set it up. B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine of B. Notice that the formulas, whatever you start with is the angle measure. So A starts here, B, C, and then these are just the other two letters. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at plugging our values in. So we are solving for B, so B squared is going to say B squared. A happens to be across from angle A, so that's 7 squared, plus C, that's going to be 5 squared, minus 2 times A, which is 7, times C, which is 5, times cosine of angle B, and angle B is 100 degrees. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have to solve for B, and in order to do that, I just have to take the square root of B. Keeping in mind we want only a positive side length, so there is no plus or minus. And at this point, we're just going to plug this straight into the calculator all in one shot. So just make sure that your calculators are in degree mode. And we're just going to put in square root and put it all in one shot. 7 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 7 times 5 cosine of 100 degrees. And this gets us approximation of about 9 point, and remember this is to the nearest tenth, so 9.3. This is an approximation. So now we have all three sides, so we actually have to solve for an angle. Well, you can actually choose which angle you want to solve for. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, let me solve for angle A. So since I'm going to solve for angle A, I'm going to start my equation with A. So A squared equals, and then the other two letters are B and C. B squared plus C squared minus 2 times these two, BC, and then cosine of the beginning letter A. All right, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the values. A I know is 7, so that's going to be 7 squared. B I know is here, 9.3 squared, plus C, which is 5 squared, minus 2 times the 9.3 times the 5, and then cosine of angle A. We don't know what angle A is, so that's what we're solving for. All right, this is the part where a lot of people mess up. This right here, we're going to get rid of adding, subtracting first, then multiplying. So we have to move the 9.3 squared and the 5 squared over to the other side first by subtracting it. And this still equals the negative 2 times 9.3 times 5 cosine of A. We cannot move this over by addition. This is all together as one term. In order to get rid of this, it's being multiplied by cosine of A. So in order to get rid of it, you have to divide by this negative 2 times 9.3 times 5. Excuse me. That cancels all of this. And then the last step is to, and actually let me write this out first. We have plus 7 squared minus 9.3 squared minus 5 squared over this negative 2, 9.3 times 5, and this all equals cosine of A. And if you remember, to get rid of cosine so you can solve for an angle, you have to use the inverse cosine of this whole thing. And that gets you angle A. So I'm going to put it in my calculator all in one shot. So to put it in, you have to hit the second cosine button so the minus 1 shows up. I'm actually going to go in and put in a fraction to make it easier for myself. On the top, I have 7 squared minus, minus 9.3 squared minus 5 squared, all divided by negative 2 times 9.3 times 5. Keep in mind you have to put a negative symbol, not a minus sign there. Otherwise, it'll say error. And this is going to be approximately 47.8 degrees. And that's for the measurement of angle A. Well, if I have angle A now, and I had angle B, I can solve for that last missing angle, because all you need to do is subtract these two from 180 degrees. So to solve for angle C, I'm just going to subtract from 180 the 100 and the 47.8, so 147.8 I'm subtracting, which gets you angle C as being approximately 32.2 degrees. And by the way, I should put little squiggles because those are an approximation, because the 47.8 is also an approximation. And by the way, in order to solve this, you needed to know side angle side or side side side. I actually had side angle side, just so you know. All right, we're going to do another example. And here we have the case where we have side side side, and that is the other case that you can use law of cosines to solve for the triangle. We don't have any angle measures, so you're going to have to choose which angle do you want to start with first. So let's say I want to solve for, I don't know, angle S. So the formula starts with the S squared equals, and then the other two letters, which happen to have a R and a Q here, Q squared plus R squared, minus 2 times these two letters, QR, then cosine of this S. All right, let's go ahead and plug in our values. S is the side length across from angle S, which is 6.3. And then Q is the side length across from angle Q, so that's 12 squared. Plus R across from that is 10.5 squared, minus 2 times 12 times 10.5, that's the Q and the R, and then cosine of angle S. All right, I have everything there except for I need to solve for S. I'm going to move everything to the other side. Start with adding and subtracting first. So we have 6.3 squared, subtract the 12 squared, subtract the 10.5 squared. The rest of this you cannot subtract over because it's together by multiplication. So in order to get rid of that, I'm actually going to have to divide it by this negative 2 times 12 times 10.5. All right, and then this cancels out. And so we have, oh, hold on one second. All right, back into light. Okay, so we have 6.3 squared minus 12 squared minus 10.5 squared all over this negative 2 times 12 times 10.5. And this equals cosine of S. To get rid of cosine so we can solve for the angle, we're going to do the cosine inverse of this whole thing. So that cancels, and we're going to plug this all into our calculator. So again, we're going to use our second cosine button, and then I'm going to put it in as a fraction. So we have 6.3 squared minus 12 squared minus 10.5 squared, and then divide that by negative 2 times 12 times 10.5, and then that's going to give us approximately 31.6 degrees. All right. Okay, I'm just going to explain the second part, which is very similar to the very beginning. Since we solved for X, you could pick any of the angles to solve for. I solved for Q. Since I start with Q, you want to use R and S minus 2 times Q, or RS cosine of Q. Plug in the values. Make sure you get rid of adding, subtracting first, and then divide by this -2 times 10.5 is 6.3. After you do that, you have to get rid of cosine by doing the inverse to get this other value. Now that you have two angle measures, you can finally solve for the third by just simply subtracting these from 180 degrees. So to get angle R, you just do 180 minus the 87.4 and subtracting the 31.6 degrees. And that finally gets you angle R as 61 degrees approximately. All right, you will get a little slip of paper from the sub. So at this point, you're going to tape that part in. Okay, go ahead and read the word problem real quick and see what key information is given to you. Okay, so I went ahead and underlined some key information. We know that the patrol boat travels at a speed of 12 nautical miles, or 12 knots. Fishing boat travels at 5 knots, and they were traveling for 3 hours because they both left this dock at the same time. We wanted to find how long will it take this patrol boat, so I drew this triangle, which is basically on here, a little bit easier to see here. Patrol boat to get to this fishing boat. All right, well, let's put in some information. We know that this patrol boat actually goes at 12 knots, or 12 nautical miles per hour. And if it travels for 3 hours, 12 times 3, well, that means it's at 36 miles from the dock. The fishing boat, it was traveling at 5 knots, which is basically 5 nautical miles per hour. If it travels for 3 hours, 5 times 3 means it's 15 miles from the dock. All right, we need to find how long it will take for them to meet up. So we're solving for what this distance is in between. Now, it doesn't have it in the word problem, but it's shown in here. This right here is 130 degrees from here to here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that 130 degrees there. All right, so in order to solve for this distance, I'm going to go ahead and use my d squared formula. D squared equals your other two sides, which I know is 15 and 36. So 15 squared plus 36 squared minus 2 times these two values, 15 times 36, and then cosine of this angle that was given across from D, which is 130 degrees. All right, to solve for D, I'm just going to basically take the square root, plug this whole thing into your calculator, and that D value is approximately 47.1 miles. That's the distance. But that's not the question. The question says, how long will it take? Well, if this distance is 47.1, keeping in mind that this patrol boat travels at 12 miles per hour, 12 nautical miles per hour, that means I'm going to have to divide it to find out how long it's going to take. So take the 47.1 divided by 12, which gets you approximately 3.925 hours. Your homework is a worksheet, so please make sure you pick that up from the sub. How to have a great weekend and see you next week.